Just finished a conversation with a client where she mentioned the human Wi-Fi network. So the context for this conversation is how we as humans seem to be able to tap into this like universal consciousness state of all of humanity. And these types of things have been studied. Dr. David Hawkins did a great job understanding how like collective consciousness kind of ebbs and flows and crescendo, and then it can have low moments. Right now feels kind of like a low moment. If I had to guess, the overall consciousness state of humans on this planet probably took a hit in the last couple years, if I had to guess. Maybe it stretched even before that. But I like this idea. So human Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi really serves as a field of information that devices within this network can connect to and then like download and receive, but also communicate and share. And it's not a bad analogy. So what we started talking about from there is, well, the scientific study that maybe really resembles what this Wi-Fi network is. And so this is the field of morphogenic networks. So morpho meaning form, genic like to create. So it's like these fields that create form and function in our lives. And if you're curious and want to know more about this, look up Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, morphogenic fields. He's probably done the most work on this. But a lot of scientists have experimented on this without even meaning to. And one of my favorite experiments on this is like kind of an initial one. And they really were studying morphogenic fields. They were studying more or less epigenetics, which is the study of how experience, trauma for example, can be passed down generationally. All right, and that kind of makes sense because, well, you don't want to have to like baby squirrels, you don't want to have to teach them like, hey, look, be afraid of the smell of a fox, right? It's just passed down that experience. So one fox had to fight for its life, or probably so many foxes throughout the planet encountering squirrels, and the squirrels collectively just know like, okay, if I smell this, that's not a good thing, I need to avoid it. And that's kind of the idea of epigenetics. Every new generation doesn't have to be taught something, okay? Those experiences can be passed down through your genes. Now, onto this experiment. So they did a pretty typical lab rat study with a maze. So you set up a maze and you have these mice go through it. And it was a pretty difficult maze, and they just kind of had the average time of this generation of mice. And it took X amount of time. So then the next generation, which didn't get to go in the maze with their parents, they had to just figure it out on their own, just figured it out much faster. And then the third generation, even faster. So every generation, without having been able to be taught or shown by a previous generation, was just better at it from the get-go. And so that's like, cool. That's epigenetics, right? That's inherited experiences through, through your genes or through whatever gets passed down. Now, in order to be scientific, can you replicate it? So other labs around the world were running this experiment with the same maze, right? Because you want to control for variables. Like, okay, this is the same maze that was used in the initial one, and there's lab mice that are from like the same source. So you can like get very specific lab mice that are similar to labs around the entire planet. Now, what these other labs found was generation 1 was already better at the maze than in that initial experiment, generation 1. And then it was true, generation 2 and 3 were better at solving this maze. And then another lab picks it up and around the world, and that generation 1 was even better. So the more times this experiment was being run around the world, the more that first generation of mice could just figure this maze out. And that's really cool. So that experiment was just, can subsequent generations be better without being taught or shown by the previous one? But what was happening was just that species of lab rat across the world was just getting better at doing this maze. And so that's this idea of this Wi-Fi network that you can tap into universal consciousness states, and that's also, that morphogenic fields. And so right now, I think a lot of us probably relate to that. There's a lot of stuff going on the planet that would decrease overall consciousness states, and a lot of it is world events, and a lot of it is just the media that's being pushed in your face, right? So the news, social media feeds, people's comments, family conversations around the dinner table can often result in fear of the situation, anger of the situation, or resentment, blame, whatever the case is, which is going to lower your state as a whole. And then, according to this theory, everybody's potentially. Now, the good news is higher consciousness states, according to the people that have been studying this, just have a lot more energy, thus can overpower lower states. So if you're operating in a consciousness state, say, of love or joy or peace, then it doesn't matter nearly as much of all the people's around you states, meaning like your field, your Wi-Fi is stronger. That's what people end up connecting to. So if you can raise your state, then your family members, your friends, your coworkers, or whatever it is, your community as a whole can then essentially log into your Wi-Fi, which has a stronger signal and will be healthier information, or these healthier morphogenic fields. So form and function, right? We'll get better, healthier form and function, and that's what the world needs. So I thought this would be a weird conversation, or at least a little off the beaten path, but seems relatable to me. And I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your concerns or, your critiques. You can also go to my website, drjakehyde.com, if you want to reach me, get in contact with me. And love to hear from you. And thanks for watching. You can like, you can subscribe, you can share with friends. All good things. All right.